National manufacturing policy has set the goal of increasing the share of manufacturing in GDP to 25% and to create 100 million jobs over a decade. 8 national investment and manufacturing zones have been announced along the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, and 9 projects have been approved by the DMIC Trust. 5 NIMZs outside DMIC have also been given in-principle approval. 3 more corridors connecting Chennai and Bengaluru, Bengaluru and Mumbai, and Amritsar and Kolkata are under different stages of
25% ग्रोथ की उम्मीद की जा रही है, जिसमें ये फैसला लिया गया है कि करीब 10 सालों में 100 मिलियन नौकरियां का रोजगार मुहैया कराया जाएगा।
Including notifying a public procurement policy, establishing technology centers and common facility centers, and launching the Kazi Mark. We have given a big push to infrastructure and capacity addition in infrastructure industries. In 2012-13 and in the 9 months of the current financial year, we have added 29,350 megawatts of power capacity, 3,928 kilometers of national highways, 39,144 kilometers of rural roads under PMGSY, 3,343 kilometers of new railway track, and 217.5 million tons of capacity per annum in our ports. Besides, 19 oil and gas blocks were given out for exploration, and 7 new airports are under construction. We have also facilitated infrastructure debt funds to provide takeout finance for infrastructure projects and ease the pressure on the banking system. Risk to capital flows. Thank you. Risk to capital flows were accentuated due to volatile
40 किलोमीटर की रेलवे लाइन डाली और 7 नए एयरपोर्ट पर काम चल रहा है।
Of a reduction in asset purchases by the US Federal Reserve. The rupee came under pressure.
रुपए में इस बार काफी दबाव देखा गया।
Undertook a number of measures to facilitate capital inflows and stabilize the foreign exchange market. Among emerging economy currencies, the rupee was affected least when the actual reduction took place in December 2013 and January 2014. Honorable members will recall that the
अगर इस वक्त आपके सामने लोकसभा के बाहर हंगामा चल रहा है और लोकसभा के अंदर बजट का इंतरिम बजट का भाषण चल रहा है, लेकिन वहां पर भी काफी हंगामा है।
To 4.4% in Q1 of 2013-14. Thanks to the numerous measures that I have narrated, I was confident that the decline will be arrested and the growth cycle will turn in the second quarter. Madam, I believe I have been vindicated. Growth in Q2 of 2013-14 has been placed at 4.8%, and growth for the whole year has been estimated at 4.9%. This means that growth in Q3 and Q4 of 2013-14 will be at least 5.2%. I can confidently assert that the economy is more stable today than what it was 2 years ago. The fiscal deficit is declining, the current account deficit has been constrained, inflation is moderated, the quarterly growth rate is on the rise, the exchange rate is stable, exports have increased, and hundreds of projects have been unblocked. Madam Speaker, all this is a result of hard work. I may add, among other mentors, my mother and Harvard taught me the value of hard work. Over the last 10 years, the UPA governments have gently nudged India and Indians into accepting that growth is an imperative, that it must be made more inclusive and converted into development, and that the growth model, in order to be sustainable, must address other concerns such as environment, intergenerational equity, indebtedness, ownership and control of resources, financing, etc. The UPA government's record on growth is unparalleled. Madam, 10 years ago, we produced 213 million tons of food grains. Today we produce 263 million tons of food grains. 10 years ago, the installed power capacity was 1,12,700 megawatts. Today, it is 2,34,600 megawatts. 10 years ago, coal production was 361 million tons per year. Today, we produce 554 million tons per year. 10 years ago, there were 51,511 kilometers of rural roads under PMGSY. Today we have 3,89,578 kilometers. 10 years ago, the central government's expenditure on education was rupees 10,145 crore. This year, we allocated rupees 79,451 crore. 10 years ago, the central government spent rupees 7,248 crore on health. This year, it will spend rupees 36,322 crore. I could multiply the examples, but what I have given will suffice. Madam Speaker, I reject the argument of policy paralysis. Just as there are business cycles, there is a cycle around the trend growth rate of an economy. Over a period of 33 years, the trend growth rate in India has been 6.2%. Average annual GDP growth during the period 1999, 2004 was 5.9%, that is below the trend rate. In the next 5-year period, 2004-2009, it was 8.4%. And in the period 2009-2014, going by the CSO's estimate, it will be 6.6%. UPA 1 and UPA 2 have delivered above the trend growth rate. Madam, let history be the judge of the last 10 years. I owe duty to my colleagues to report on some of the major achievements in the current financial year that concerns the economy of the country and the welfare of the people. We are not simply looking back, we are actually looking forward, and therefore I shall also report on the initiatives that are being taken by my colleagues. Government took several notable decisions, including some that were described as courageous and long overdue. Sugar was fully decontrolled, a gradual correction of diesel prices was started, railway fares were rationalized for the first time in a decade, applications were invited for issue of new bank licenses, DISCOMs, mostly sick, are being restructured with generous central assistance. 12.8 lakh land titles covering 18.8 lakh hectares were distributed under the Scheduled Tribes and other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act. The right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act was notified on 1/1/2014, finally putting to rest an oppressive colonial law of 1894. The National Food Security Act was passed, assuring food grain to 67% of the population. The new Companies Act replaced the law of 1956 vintage. The PFRDA Act was passed, placing the new pension system on a statutory basis and establishing a statutory regulator. Centrally sponsored schemes were restructured into 66 programs for greater synergy. Funds under these programs will be released as central assistance to state plans, thus giving states greater authority and responsibility. As a result, central assistance to plans of states and union territories will rise substantially from rupees 1,36,254 crore in BE 2013-14 to rupees 3,38,562 crore in 2014-15. Public sector enterprises will achieve a new record in capital expenditure of rupees 2,57,641 crore in 2013-14. About 50,000 megawatts of thermal and hydel power capacity is under construction after receiving all clearances and approvals. 78,000 megawatts of power capacity has been assured coal supply. The FDI policy was liberalized to attract larger investments in telecommunication, pharmaceuticals, civil aviation, power trading, exchanges and multi-brand retail. Approval was granted to establish 2 semiconductor wafer fab units that will be the bedrock of the electronics hardware industry. The IT modernization project of the Department of Posts, with an outlay of rupees 4,909 crore, will be operational by 2015 in all 1,55,000 locations. The Kudangulam Nuclear Power Plant Unit 1 achieved criticality and is generating 180 million units of power. The 500 megawatt prototype fast breeder reactor at Kalpakkam is nearing completion. 7 nuclear power reactors are also under construction with the aim of achieving an installed capacity of 10,080 megawatts by the end of the 12th plan. After exceeding the target and achieving 1,684 megawatts of grid-connected solar power, the National Solar Mission entered the second phase on 1/4/2013. It is proposed to take up 4 ultra-mega solar power projects, each with a capacity of over 500 megawatts in 2014-15. Ministry of MSME will create the India Inclusion Innovation Fund to promote grassroots innovations with social returns to support enterprises in the MSME sector. I propose to make an initial contribution of rupees 100 crore to the corpus of the fund. In order to promote entrepreneurship among the scheduled castes and to provide concessional finance to them, IFCI will set up a venture capital fund for scheduled castes. I propose to provide an initial capital of rupees 200 crore, which can be supplemented every year. The restructured ICDS has been implemented in 400 districts and will be rolled out in the remaining districts from 1/4/2014. Government has approved the National Agroforestry Policy 2014, which has multiple objectives including employment, productivity, conservation and adaptation. A mechanism for marketing minor forest produce has been introduced, and the budget has allocated rupees 444.59 crore to continue the scheme in 2014-15. A new plan scheme with an allocation of rupees 100 crore has been approved to promote community radio stations. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has delivered new technologies to the people: the JE vaccine, a diagnostic test for thalassemia, and a Magni visualizer for detection of cervical cancer. The northeastern states, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, deserve special attention. In addition to funds allocated in the current year, I propose to release a sum of rupees 1,200 crore as additional assistance to these states before the end of the year. Madam, India joined a handful of countries when it launched the Mars Orbiter mission. We now have the capability in launch vehicle technology, cryogenics and navigation, meteorological and communication satellites, and are largely self-reliant. Several flight tests, navigational satellites and space missions are planned for 2014-15. Madam, last year I had made 3 promises, and I had asked honourable members to keep before them the faces of the girl child, the young student and the poor. To ensure the dignity and safety of women, I promised the Nirbhaya Fund and put rupees 1,000 crore into the fund. So far, we have approved 2 proposals that will receive support from the fund. In order to make it clear that the fund will be a permanent fund, I intend to declare the grant of rupees 1,000 crore as non-lapsable. And in order to support more proposals, I propose to contribute to the fund another sum of rupees 1,000 crore next year. Secondly, I had promised an ambitious program to skill millions of young men and women and had tasked the National Skill Development Corporation to implement the program. The National Skill Certification and Monetary Reward Scheme was launched in August 2013 and has been widely hailed as a success. At last count, 24 sector skill councils, 400 training partners and 17 assessment agencies had joined the program. 204 job roles have been finalized. 1,68,043 youth had enrolled and 77,710 have completed their training. Honourable members will recall that I had set apart rupees 1,000 crore for the scheme. The whole of that money will be transferred to the NSD Trust, and I propose to transfer another sum of rupees 1,000 crore next year to enable the Trust to scale up the program of NSDC rapidly. I may add that NSDC actually complements the initiatives of several ministries which steer skill development programs such as UDAN in Jammu and Kashmir. Thirdly, I had promised that the direct benefit transfer scheme would be rolled out throughout the country. The scheme is barely a year old. Money is being transferred to beneficiaries under 27 identified schemes, including the National Social Assistance Program. A total of 54,20,114 transactions have been put through until 31/1/2014, and rupees 628 crore has been transferred. Another sum of rupees 3,370 crore has been transferred to 2.1 crore LPG beneficiaries. The latter scheme has been put on hold for the time being, pending resolution of some difficulties that have been pointed out. However, let me reiterate that the government remains fully committed to Aadhaar, under which 57 crore unique numbers have been issued so far, and to opening bank accounts for all Aadhaar holders in order to promote financial inclusion. Who needs Aadhaar? It is those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, the poor, the migrant workers, the homeless, and the oppressed who need Aadhaar, and we will ensure that they get Aadhaar. I have no doubt that in course of time, even critics of Aadhaar will realize that Aadhaar is a tool of empowerment. Madam, I shall now give an overview of the interim budget. In some years, we over-provide in the budget. In those years, savings are inevitable. Because if there is lower than expected growth, there will be lower than estimated revenues as well. 2013-14 has been one such year. I'm afraid we will not be able to spend the budgeted planned expenditure, but non-planned expenditure will exceed the budget by a small amount. In order to sustain the pace of planned expenditure, I have decided to keep planned expenditure in 2014-15 at the same level at which it was budgeted in 2013-14. I have provided rupees 5,55,322 crore for planned expenditure. I am glad to inform the House that all the ministries, departments that run key flagship programs of the UPA government have been provided adequate funds. In all the following cases, I have provided in 2014-15 an amount equal to or higher than in the BE of 2013-14 and irrespective of the revised estimates for the year. Ministry of Minority Affairs, rupees 3,711 crore. Ministry of Tribal Affairs, rupees 4,379 crore. Ministry of Housing and Poverty Alleviation, rupees 6,000 crore. Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, rupees 6,730 crore. Ministry of Panchayati Raj, rupees 7,000 crore. Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, rupees 15,260 crore. Ministry of Women and Child Development, rupees 21,000 crore. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, rupees 33,725 crore. Ministry of Human Resource Development, rupees 67,398 crore. And Ministry of Rural Development, rupees 82,202 crore. My colleague, the Minister of Railways, presented the railway budget a few days ago. Budgetary support to railways has been increased from rupees 26,000 crore in BE 2013-14 to rupees 29,000 crore in 2014-15. Railways need to mobilize huge resources through market borrowing and private-public partnership schemes. It is proposed to identify new instruments and new mechanisms to raise funds for railway projects. Honourable members will be happy to know that I propose to allocate rupees 48,638 crore to the scheduled caste sub-plan and rupees 30,726 crore to the tribal sub-plan. They will also be happy to find that the gender budget has rupees 97,533 crore and the child budget has rupees 81,024 crore. I am confident that there will be no cause for complaint. If there are any shortcomings, they can be addressed when the regular budget is presented. There is enough flexibility in the expenditure budget to make necessary changes and allocations within the overall resource envelope. Non-plan expenditure in 2014-15 is estimated at rupees 12,07,892 crore. Of this, the expenditure on subsidies for food, fertilizer and fuel will be rupees 2,46,397 crore. This is slightly more than the revised estimate of rupees 2,45,452 crore in 2013-14. For fuel subsidy, I have provided rupees 65,000 crore. We have this year absorbed the rollover of rupees 45,000 crore from the fourth quarter of 2012-13 and will roll over only rupees 35,000 crore from the fourth quarter of this year into the next year. Rupees 1,15,000 crore has been allocated for food subsidy, keeping in mind our government's firm and irrevocable commitment to implement the National Food Security Act throughout the country. The allocation for defence has been enhanced by 10% from rupees 2,03,672 crore in BE 2013-14 to rupees 2,24,000 crore in 2014-15. Madam, honourable members are aware of the long-standing demand of the Defence Forces for one rank, one pension. It is an emotive issue, it has legal implications, and it has to be handled with great sensitivity. During the tenure of the UPA governments, changes in the pension rules applicable to the defence services were notified on 3 occasions in 2006, 2010 and 2013. As a result, the gap between pre-2006 retirees and post-2006 retirees has been closed in 4 ranks, subject to some anomalies that are being addressed. These are Havildar, Naib Subedar, Subedar and Subedar Major. There is still a small gap in the ranks of Sepoy and Nayak and a gap in the ranks of Major and above. We need a young fighting force, we need young Jawans and we need young officers. We also need to take care of those who served in the defence forces only for a limited number of years. Government has therefore decided to walk the last mile and close the gap for all retirees in all ranks. I am happy to announce that government has accepted the principle of one rank, one pension for the defence forces. This decision will be implemented prospectively from the financial year 2014-15. The requirement for 2014-15 is estimated at rupees 500 crore and as an earnest of the UPA government's commitment, I propose to transfer the sum of rupees 500 crore to the defence pension account in the current financial year itself. A modernisation plan at a cost of rupees 11,009 crore has been approved to strengthen the capacity of Central Armed Police Forces and to provide them state-of-the-art equipment and technology. Funds have been provided in the current financial year and for the next year. Honourable members, the announcements that are made concerning the financial sector in the budget speech of February 2013 have been or are being implemented. In 2014-15, I propose to provide rupees 11,200 crore for capital infusion in public sector banks. They have opened 5,207 branches so far against a target of 8,023 branches and are near the goal of installing an ATM at every branch. The Bharatiya Mahila Bank was inaugurated on 19/11/2013. Rupees 6,000 crore was provided to the Rural Housing Fund and rupees 2,000 crore to the Urban Housing Fund. Banks are under strain owing to rising non-performing assets. Bankers have assured me that as the economy turns, they will be able to contain the NPAs, recover more loans and build healthier balance sheets. Meanwhile, I cannot fail to acknowledge the yeoman service rendered by our banks in reaching government's policies and programs to the people. This year, banks will exceed the target of rupees 7 lakh crore of agricultural credit. I am therefore encouraged to set a target of rupees 8 lakh crore for 2014-15. Honourable members will recall that an interest subvention scheme was introduced in 2006-07. There is a subvention of 2% and an incentive of 3% for prompt payment, thus reducing the effective rate of interest on farm loans to 4%. So far, rupees 23,924 crore has been released under the scheme. I propose to continue the scheme in 2014-15. Madam, 10 years ago, the minorities had 14,15,000 bank accounts in 121 districts of India where there's a concentration of minorities. At the end of March 2013, they had 43,52,000 accounts and the volume of lending had soared from rupees 4,000 crore to rupees 66,500 crore. Loans to minority communities in the whole country stood at rupees 2,11,451 crore at the end of December 2013. 10 years ago, only 9,71,182 women self-help groups had been credit linked to banks. At the end of December 2013, 41,16,000 women SHGs had been provided credit and the amount of credit outstanding was rupees 36,893 crore. 10 years ago, only a few thousand students, mostly the well-connected, got education loans. At the end of December 2013, public sector banks had 25,70,254 student loan accounts and the amount outstanding was rupees 57,700 crore. Honourable members will recall that my predecessor, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, had in the budget of 2009-10 introduced a central scheme for interest subsidy in respect of education loans disbursed after 1/4/2009, under which government took over the burden of interest for the duration of the period of study and a little beyond. The scheme brought great cheer to student borrowers and their families. However, I have noticed a sense of discrimination among students who had borrowed before 31/3/2009, struggled to pay interest during the period of study and continue to service the loan afterwards. I think they deserve some relief. I therefore propose a moratorium period for all education loans taken up to 31/3/2009 and outstanding on 31/12/2013. Government will take over the liability for outstanding interest as on 31/12/2013, but the borrower would have to pay interest for the period after 1/1/2014. It is estimated that nearly 9 lakh student borrowers will benefit to the tune of approximately rupees 2,600 crore. I intend to provide the funds in the current financial year itself. Accordingly, a sum of rupees 2,600 crore will be transferred to the Canara Bank, the designated CSI banker. Details of the scheme will be announced shortly. This year, Life Insurance Corporation has opened 1,252 offices, and the 4 public sector general insurance companies have opened 1,849 offices in towns with a population of 10,000 or more to serve peri-urban and rural areas. They are moving steadily to achieve the goals set for them. A number of steps have been envisaged to deepen the Indian financial markets. Among them are to comprehensively revamp the ADR-GDR scheme and enlarge the scope of depository receipts,